afraid, and they hid themselves from the presence of the Lord. The same thing happens today. Every time our relationship with God is not right, we lose that confidence. The third reason we lack this confidence, common to us all, we'll easily identify with it this morning, a series of setbacks and knocks in life. We've all had them, haven't we? Big ones, small ones, coming when we least expect them to, right out of the blue, taking us when we're not prepared. Do you know those negative past experiences, like failure, disappointment, a crisis, trauma, painful past memories? They're all like seeds that are lying deep down in our subconscious. They'll always bear fruit, reverberating around within our emotions, echoing in the corridors of our mind and our memory. And when we're faced with challenges and opportunities or problems, our confidence is shaken because of the things that have happened to us. And one of the reasons we lack this confidence is settling for mediocre Christianity, where we choose the easy option, the quiet life. We settle down. We don't want to rock the boat or cause any upset. We begin to conform to the status quo and start to compromise in so many different areas. We come to the place where we don't want to take any risks. Do you know faith can be spelled R-I-S-K? And unless we take a few risks, we don't develop. Unless we're prepared to allow ourselves to be stretched, to move beyond where we are at the moment, to get out of the boat of our security, to begin to move into new areas, then we don't grow in confidence. Did you know that on the surface of the moon, there is entombed a poster there with the rather interesting words, "Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far they can go." Oh, how true that is about space travel and all the great endeavors of man, but how true spiritually. Let me ask you this morning. When was the last time you risked going too far? A little bit near the edge. Do you know, I'd much rather go a little bit over the top occasionally than just stay quietly, conservatively there in my comfort zone. They're in that place of security. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Isn't it easy to go on doing the same old thing in the same old way? And what happens is that we create a groove that becomes a rut that we begin to get bogged down in. The first time to pray publicly in a meeting. The first time to move in the gifts of the Spirit, to prophesy, to speak out in a tongue or interpret that tongue. The first time to share our faith with somebody. The first time to dance before the Lord, to shout unto God with a voice of triumph. That first time is so important because it helps us to enter into a greater realm and depth of confidence with God. So back to Psalm 27. Now, to fully appreciate the strength of confidence David is expressing here, we've got to understand the context that he's speaking these words in. And when you look at Psalm 27, we find this. David is surrounded by personal trouble, confronted by overwhelming difficulties. He's in the midst of great pressure. And yet in verse 13, he confidently says, "I believe I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." Hallelujah. Now in verse 13, let me show you this morning, there are three things in that one verse that we need to have in our experience this morning. Number one, in verse 13 we find a confession of bold affirmation. Number two, a clarity of unwavering anticipation. And number three, a conviction of present appropriation. Let's look at the first. A confession of bold affirmation. This clear, positive declaration of faith. I believe. Hallelujah. Isn't it wonderful to have faith? We are privileged people this morning if we've got faith. I mean, how do people get through life today with all its pressures and stresses, with all the doom and the gloom that is around and the conflicts that go on. How do people get through life without faith? And yet you and I, whatever we're confronted with, whatever overshadows us, whatever is coming against us, we're able to affirm in every situation and say, I believe. Do you know, these are two of the most powerful, life-changing words in our spiritual development. Because of 1 John chapter 5 and verse 4. Faith is the victory that overcomes the world. Whatever is trying to drag you down and pull you under and knock you over, you're always able to bounce back up again. You're always able to rise up as more than a conqueror, triumphing in every situation. When you can affirm that you believe, then the blessing of God begins to come. The demons from hell start to shake, and the victory of the Lord is yours when you believe. Do you know, even at our weakest moments, at our lowest ebb, rather than saying things like, it's hard, I'm struggling, I'm discouraged, I'm depressed, I'm disappointed, I don't understand what's happening. Do you know, rather than saying things like that, we need to start to confess, but I believe. I'm struggling, but I believe. I'm discouraged, but I believe. I'm sick this morning, but I believe. I'm hurting inside, but I believe. I don't understand why this has happened to me, but I believe. And do you know, when we're able to do that, we start to see the windows of heaven opening up and the blessing of God coming down upon us, because we're affirming that we believe our God. Now, this is not denying the problems. It's declaring the possibilities. Jesus said all things are possible to them that believe. Did you know that we enter into every blessing that God has got for us through the door of faith? That's why you'll read in Hebrews chapter 3. The very last verse in Hebrews chapter 3 makes this statement. The children of Israel could not enter in because of their unbelief. All that was prepared for them, it was finished. It was there for them to enjoy and experience. They couldn't enter into it because of their unbelief. A good confession of faith is so important for each one of us to have. In Joel 3 and verse 10, the declaration is, let the weak say, I am strong. Do you notice it does not declare, let the strong say, I am strong. No, let the weak. You may be feeling weak this morning. You may be feeling as though you're struggling, as though you're fearful. You may be feeling inadequate, intimidated. There may be all sorts of things going on. But God says, come on, affirm your faith. Let the weak say. Let that confession come. Let the weak say, I am strong. It is not enough to quietly, privately believe in your heart. You've got to confess it with your lips. You've got to speak it out. You've got to begin to declare, to prophesy. You've got to begin to get at what is there inside, deposited by God in your heart and in your life. Romans 10 and verse 9. If we confess with our lips that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God has raised him from the dead, we shall be saved. Now, the same way we experienced our very first amazing miracle of being born again is how we've got to continue the adventure of faith. Speaking out, declaring what we know to be true in our heart, confessing it with our lips. Let me give you some examples. In the Old Testament, just consider the walls of Jericho. Do you know, the walls of Jericho did not fall because the people believed in their heart. The walls of Jericho, there was not one crack seen in that wall, not one stone fell from that wall because the people knew in their mind what God was able to do. It wasn't until they gave expression to what they believed, as they started to speak out with their lips, it was the shout of praise that brought the walls tumbling down. Think in the New Testament, a man called Bartimaeus, probably blind from birth. Now, anyone that's been blind for that length of time, you can see it in their eyes. They're obviously blind. You don't have to ask them.